Hello everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am here to do a get ready with me style mid-August reading wrap up where I do my makeup while discussing the books that I have read so far this month. So I have 24 books to talk about in this video. Oh my goodness. That is a lot of books. Some of them are volumes of manga and comics. So honestly, truly, that's how I've been able to read so many books so far this month. Also, I am planning on doing an eyeshadow look with the Nautical Nonsense palette. This is a SpongeBob themed palette by Wet n Wild. I don't know if you can still get this. I don't know if this was like a limited edition collection or what. Let me open up the palette for you. Here is the color story that we're looking at. I'm thinking of doing like some rosy brown tones today. I don't know. I'm not really in the mood to do any like bright, colorful looks. So yeah, and as usual with these get ready with me wrap-ups, I have already done my foundation and concealer, eye primer, all that good stuff. So I'm ready to just jump right into eyeshadow. So for the entire first week of August, that was the Romance Takeover Readathon Light versus Dark edition. So I have a reading blog for that linked up in the cards above as usual. So most of the books that I read in that first week of August, I discussed in that video, but I also read 3 volumes of manga that were not romance manga, so I didn't discuss them in that vlog. So I'll quickly talk about those now. First up, we have volumes 4 and 5 of The Way of the House Husband. You guys know this is like one of my new manga obsessions. This is basically a cozy Yakuza comedy manga series. I think that's like the best way to describe this series. I've been talking about it a lot in recent videos, but I'll just quickly say it's about Tatsu. He used to be a Yakuza boss. He left that life to marry his now wife Miku and become a house husband, and he just takes his job very seriously, and we love Tatsu. We love Tatsu in this house. I will say volume 5 kind of went off the rails. There's a chapter involving a rap battle, and the translator felt the need to use AAVE, and it's cringy, not gonna lie. So I did want to point that out. I still had a fun time with these 2 volumes. This is just such a great palette cleanser series for when I've just been reading a ton of the same like genre books and I need something different. I turn to this series. So there's only 2 more volumes out for me to read. Volume 8 is coming out soon. Next up, we have volume 2 of Takane and Hana. This is kind of a weird series. It involves Takane and Hana, obviously. They meet because of this arranged marriage thing going on. Hana poses as her older sister for this meeting because her older sister flakes out. And basically things happen, and now Takane and Hana have this kind of weird friendship. There's definitely no romance going on right now. This is an 18-volume series, so we have the time to develop their romance, and hopefully their romance doesn't kick in until Hana is at least 18. But this series is really funny. I definitely am enjoying my time with it. This volume I didn't love quite as much as volume 1. Volume 1 was like almost a 5-star read for me, whereas this one was like a very much solid, you know, 4-star. So enjoyed it. I think I will continue on with the series because I'm just curious to see the direction this author is gonna go in with their story. But yeah, it's overall a fun time. So next, let's quickly review all of the books that I read for the Romance Takeover Readathon. The first book I have is Blind Side by Candy Steiner. I gave this one 5 stars. This was definitely one of the highlights of the readathon for me. It's one of those books that upon reflection, I find myself loving this book even like more and more, you know, because it just like perfectly met my expectations, and I love when that happens. This is about Clay and Gianna. This becomes like a friends to lovers, fake dating romance with some sexy lessons thrown in. And it's a great time. Clay can get it any day of the week. And I also really loved Gianna's character and the way that she swept him off his feet. Next up, we have Psycho by Onley James. I also gave this 5 stars. This is book 2 in her Necessary Evil series, which centers around these 7 adopted brothers who are all psychopaths and or sociopaths, and they were raised by this scientist, Dr. Mulvaney, and they were raised to become vigilante serial killers. And so these are all MM romances. This one was about August and Lucas. They are both professors at a university. And what was really cool is that Lucas is like, I think he's like a clairvoyant. I think that's the term. And when he touches an object or he touches a person, he sees visions of their past. And so their meet cute is very interesting because he bumps into August accidentally and he sees visions of just torture and murder. And he's like, what the hell is going on? And it just goes on from there. A wonderful time, arguably better than book 1 somehow. So yeah, I gave this 5 stars. Loved it. Next up we have Bright Like Wildfire by Juliet Cross. Another 5-star read. I was having a good time with this readathon for sure. This one is about Betty and Bennett. It's a small town romance that takes place in Louisiana. This is like a, I would say kind of like a frenemies to lovers situation. And it centers around how Betty and Bennett are leads in a straight play together at their local community theater. You guys should know by now, I am the biggest theater nerd ever, basically. And so I was loving that. And I learned from Jessin Reads Romance that Juliet loves theater herself and she's very much involved in her local community theater. I love that so much. Wow, this book blew me away. Not in the first half. The first half I was having a good time, but it was more of a 4-star read. But the second half was amazing and spectacular because that was really where the emotional connection between these two characters kicked in. There's even like a grumpy heroine, sunshiny hero vibe going on that is just crack to me. I eat that shit up. There were some wonderful sex scenes that, as hot as they were also like beautiful and tender. Amazing. 5 stars. Incredible. Can't recommend it highly enough if you are looking for a small town romance. Next up we have Ruthless Creatures by JT Geisinger. I gave this 4.5 stars. It was pretty darn close to a 5-star read. This one centers around Natalie and Cage, who is a part of the Russian mafia, the Bratva. But he sees Natalie and he just knows that he wants her. And he is very, very clear about that. I was not ready for Cage in the best way. Like, he is just so intense and oh my goodness, their sex scenes, like, whew. Again, talk about intense. Like, this is just a really great time. The audiobook is incredible. I cannot recommend the audiobook highly enough because they had the male narrator. He would narrate all of the dialogue from male characters, even when we were in Natalie's POV and the female narrator was talking, and vice versa. I love when audiobooks go that extra mile and do that. I know that's not very easy to do, but I really appreciated it, and I cannot wait to listen to the audiobooks for the rest of this series. Next up, we have Lore Olympus Volume 2 by Rachel Smith. Don't have much to say about this one, but it's a Hades and Persephone retelling. Gave this 5 stars. Just as amazing as Volume 1. Volume 3 comes out, I think, in a couple of months. This is just spectacular. I adore the art style. That'll give you an idea of what we're working with. Love it, love it, love it, love it. Do want to say that this volume deals with the aftermath of something that happened at the end of Volume 1, which was a sexual assault. And so now the character that was assaulted is just trying to cope with that and trying to move on, but that's pretty much impossible when the person that assaulted her is very much still in her life and is obsessed with her. But this was spectacular. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Next up, we have Sweat and Soap Volume 3. You guys should know by now that this is my new manga obsession. This is the sweetest and cutest office romance manga. It does have kind of a weird premise, being that Kotaro, the hero, is obsessed with Asako's scent. I really enjoyed Volume 3. It probably was my least favorite of the series so far, just because I didn't get the same feelings of like giddiness and joy that I got from volumes 1 and 2, mainly because of just kind of the direction the plot was going in for a couple of the chapters, but it was still amazing. I mean, I just love these characters with my whole heart, and I wish they were real people so that I could be BFFs with them. Next up, we have Royally Endowed by Emma Chase. I DNF'd this at about like the 28% mark, which is really unfortunate because I was loving, I loved book 2 of this series, which is Royally Matched, and I really enjoyed book 1 of the series, which is Royally Screwed. So as you can tell, this is a royalty romance series. This one specifically is a bodyguard romance, and I just did not feel connected to these characters, and so I didn't want to keep wasting my time on this book, so I put it down. Next up, we have The Demon Next Door by Chase Verity. This is, as you can tell, a demon paranormal romance between this demon named Nui, who controls shadows, basically. He's a single dad, and then our heroine Molly, she's a single mom, and their sons become BFFs, and they just have this insane chemistry. And this is not the steamiest novella out there, but their one sex scene is worth it because Nui uses his shadows in a very interesting way. That's all I'll say. But this was really sweet and wholesome as well. I really love Chase Verity's writing and her vibe. Next up, we have Love Lessons by Cassie Min, but I just kind of randomly picked this one up because I needed a taboo romance for my bingo board for the readathon. And so this is a teacher-student romance, takes place in college. We have Ellis, our hero, who is a college professor, and Avery, who is a student in his class. Yeah, so it's just their romance. I really liked the steamy scenes in this novella. Cassie Mint usually does a pretty good job with that, but I feel like more than anything, her romances are more like sweet with a dash of angst, with a good dash of steamy times. Whereas this one felt a bit steamier than some of her other novellas that I've read. But yeah, I had a good time, gave it 4 stars. Next up, we have the book that broke me, gutted me, built me back up again, and I'm so obsessed with it that I had to buy a physical copy. That is Behind the Bars by Brittany Cherry. So this is a childhood friends to lovers romance, takes place in New Orleans, and is centered around jazz and soul music. And oh my God, do these characters go through it, especially Elliot, our hero. Oh boy, huge content, like huge content warning for very intense and cruel bullying. Like, I can't emphasize that enough. It's bad. It's very bad. Very bad. Also content warning for a violent death on page, and loss of a loved one. This book is a lot. Brittany Cherry, like, really went there for this book, you guys. But this was just absolutely stunning. I cried so much, and it takes a lot for a book to make me cry, but this book really went there. Absolutely stunning. I loved the side characters, both Elliot's family and Jasmine's dad. Loved him. Yeah, can't recommend this highly enough. This is only the second book that I've read by this author, and I need to read more, but I also like need to be in the mood to pick up her books because, like I said, they will break me. Next up, we have The Bodyguard by Katherine Cowell. This is her latest release, and this centers around Jack, who is a movie star, but he is now a recluse. And then we have Hannah, who ends up becoming his bodyguard, and things go on from there. Katherine Cowell is a women's fiction author, but this book definitely focuses the most on the romance of the books that I've read by her. All of her books do feature a solid romance, but this one definitely centers on it the most. So I ended up giving this 4 stars. I felt like something was missing from their romance. I'm not necessarily annoyed because this book is closed door. That doesn't take anything away from their romance. There was something else. There was just something else missing. I feel like I wanted more romantic gestures to be shown on page. That was annoying too, was that their epilogue was a lot of just telling and not showing about how their romance developed and then how they eventually got married and like blah, blah, blah. There's also like a really weird scene in this book involving a hostage situation and like accidental gun violence. that doesn't quite match the vibe of the rest of the book. So I just wanted to throw that out there, but I still enjoyed it overall. I really like Katherine Center's writing. There's some beautiful quotes in this. And I love the theme of like being lovable, like being worthy of love, and then also sending love out into the world. So, you know, this book definitely had some highlights for sure. All right, so that's everything for the Romance Takeover readathon. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. So next up we have Imakoi Volume 1. Y'all, I gave this 5 stars. This is like the most adorable YA romance. Like, my heart was going to burst. It was so sweet and so adorable. But this is about our main character. We have Yagyu and we have Satomi. So this starts off with, they are both on the train going to school and someone is trying to grope Satomi. So Yagyu steps in and like blocks the creepo and protects Satomi. And so from there, she starts developing a crush on him. And he's one of these guys that just does nice things for people and doesn't expect nor want any thanks for it. And so this just ends up being really adorable because the two of them start dating, and we love two characters that communicate pretty clearly to each other, and they both really like each other. Like, they're just so freaking cute together. I am absolutely obsessed. I have volume 2 on hold on my Libby app, so that should come in pretty soon. And then volume 3 has not come out yet. I think that's coming out in just a couple months though. Next up we have Heavy Crown by Sophie Lark. This is the 6th and final book in her Brutal Birthright Mafia series. So this one is about Sebastian, who is the youngest of the Gallo siblings. So that's the Italian mafia family, and he ends up meeting Yelena, who is the daughter of the boss of the Bratva in Chicago. This takes place in Chicago, but what he doesn't know is that Yelena has been forced to date Sebastian by her father. Her father is the worst. He is the worst person ever. He's terrible, awful. I ended up giving this 4 stars. This definitely wasn't my favorite book of the series, but it also wasn't my least favorite, you know, so there's that. I liked their romance. I will say it's pretty insta-lovey, but at about the 50% mark, shit goes down, and then it kind of becomes this like kind of hate to love dynamic situation. And the romance is definitely overshadowed by the mafia plotline, which that same kind of thing happened in Savage Lover, which is book 3 of this series. That one is unfortunately my least favorite book of the series because it just focused on a heist that nobody cares about. And this one kind of deals with like the fallout of that heist basically. So yeah, I also liked that the epilogue of this book does a really good job of introducing the Kingmaker Chronicles. That's the spin-off series to this. Yeah, and I thought that that epilogue was very intriguing. So yeah, gave this 4 stars overall. I love this series. It's so good. I need to keep reading more from Sophie Lark. She is an absolute icon and a legend. Next up, we have The Boys. I read the Omnibus Volume 1. There's like 6 volumes of omnibuses, which are combinations of 2 volumes of the comics. So I basically read volumes 1 and 2 of this series because I have been watching season 3 of the Amazon Prime show, and so it was just time that I finally read the original source material. So if you know nothing about this series, whether it be the show or the comics, this is basically centering around just corrupt superheroes, and this is just a very dark and twisted and fucked up series. Both the comics and the show are very dark and twisted for sure. And after reading volumes 1 and 2 of the comics, I don't know if I'm gonna continue. Here's my frustration with the comics, is that it took me so long to get through this omnibus. So long. Now I will say the omnibus, like I said, it's 2 volumes in one, so it was like about 350 pages, but comics And manga and graphic novels, like usually I can fly through volumes, you know, but this one, it took me a very long time to get through because it is a very traditional superhero comic style of comics, and there's a lot of like tiny speech bubbles with a lot of text packed in, and I just found that kind of hard to read at times. I felt like it slowed my reading speed down quite a bit because there was a lot of tiny text, and I'm trying to like fully understand what's going on because the story of the comics definitely goes in a different direction from the show. And in the first 2 volumes of the comics, this doesn't focus a lot on the Seven, which is like the Justice League that the series and the show centers around. So I'm assuming that future volumes will focus on the Seven, but I just wanted to see more of them in these first 2 volumes. So really the comics are focusing more on like the formation of the boys, of course, which the show does as well in the first season. But also they're taking down like other superheroes, not the Seven. And there's a plot having to do with like the Russian mafia, which that kind of gets brought up in season 3 of the show. Overall, I do think I enjoy the show more. That's kind of the bottom line. The show is brilliant in my mind, and like there's very few critiques that I have of the show. And the comics are solid, but like I said, it was just not the most enjoyable reading experience. It was taking me way too long to get through it. And as much as I liked it, I didn't love it. And so yeah, I don't think I'm gonna continue on with the comics. Next up, we have An Incurable Case of Love, Volume 1. This is a romance manga series. It's a pretty short series too. It's only 7 volumes, which was why I was even more excited to just jump into this because I could read this whole series relatively quickly. But this centers around our hero who's a doctor, and our heroine who 5 years before the main part of the story, they met when this older woman just collapsed on the street, and they both happened to be there. And so the hero just stepped right in and helped out the old woman. And so our heroine just kind of fell in love with him like right then and there. And she decided right there that she should become a nurse herself, and maybe hopefully one day she would actually work with him herself. And so that kind of was her motivation for going into nursing school. So now she's out of nursing school and she is working at the same hospital as the hero, and he is just a grumpy grump hero, and she is definitely more sunshiny. And so she kind of confesses her feelings to him like kind of right away about like why she fell for him, and he's like, girl, what? And so it goes on from there. This was just enjoyable. I gave it 4 stars. Nothing like mind-blowing, but I definitely will continue on with the series at some point. I'm interested to see like how their romance progresses. Next up, I have Something is Killing the Children, Volume 1. I've been trying to get more and more into comics. I've been reading a lot of manga lately, and that's all well and good, but I also want to read comics as well. So this is a series that Ashley from Bookish Realm has highly recommended. So as you can probably tell from the title, there is in fact something killing the children. There is this scary ass monster living in the woods right outside this small town, just killing kids. And so this centers around really 2 main characters, I would say. There's this one teenage boy, can't remember any names of course, but at the very beginning of this volume, he goes out into the woods at night with his friends during like a sleepover on like a dare. And all of his friends get eaten and killed except for him. And then there is this monster hunter who comes to town, and she is there to get rid of this thing that is killing the children. And so I gave this 4 stars. I thought it was really solid. I really like the art style. It's got like a sort of unpolished feel to it that really works for the concept and the story. I'm really hoping that Volume 2 will expand upon the characters and the world and these monster hunters themselves and all of that, because I really feel like this volume doesn't give you much in terms of like development, whether it be plot or character. It's just a really well done horror comic series. There's definitely some blood and gore, but it's nothing like too bad in my opinion. Maybe it's the art style that makes it more readable, I'm not sure. But yeah, just know that like things definitely get pretty scary, and I definitely will be continuing on with the series. Next up, we have Fence Volume 3. I gave this one 4 stars. I didn't love this one quite as much as volumes 1 and 2. By the way, if you don't know, this is a series that centers around this private boys' school and specifically the fencing team at this school. And so there's like some rivalries going on, maybe inklings of romances happening. And so all 3 of these volumes have been centering on the tryouts for the fencing team because there's only 3 spots to fight over. And so, you know, all of our characters desperately want one of those spots. And yeah, this one just wasn't quite as enjoyable as volumes 1 and 2. And I think that might be because this focused like pretty much solely on the tryouts and not as much on the characters like volumes 1 and 2 did. Next up, we have QQ Sweeper Volume 1. This is an odd manga series for sure. The whole concept is that there are these sweepers that go into people's minds and literally like clean their minds of bad thoughts, and the bad thoughts manifest as these like big old scary bugs that the sweepers have to get rid of. And so our main character in this first volume is learning how to become a sweeper, basically. And I gave this 4 stars like right after finishing it, but upon reflection, it's definitely more of a 3-star read. The concept is good, but the characters for me aren't quite interesting enough for me to want to continue on with the series. I can't speak. But next up, I have Bound by Vengeance by Cora Riley. This is book, let me think about this, book 5 in her Born in Blood Mafia Chronicles series. And this one takes quite a bit of a different direction because the first 4 books in this series centered around the Chicago and New York Italian mafias, whereas this one, now all of a sudden we're turning our focus more to the Camorra family, which is the Vegas Italian mafia. And so now I'm starting to see the connection between this series and the Camorra Chronicles spin-off series. And so this one is definitely a Beauty and the Beast retelling. We have our hero Growl, that's his name. That's not like his real name, but like that's the name he goes by. He is like a soldier in the mafia, and Kara, our heroine, basically her father fucks up bad. And so the mafia boss kills him and gives her over to Growl as his reward for being such a good soldier, basically. So yeah, she ends up going to live with him and a romance ensues between the 2 of them. I just have to say the stars of this book were definitely Coco and Bandit, which are Growl's 2 dogs. They were adorable. One of them, Coco in particular, reminds me of my dog Chloe. So I was just obsessed with that. And this was just a solid book of the series. Not my favorite, but also like not my least favorite book. So I'm just looking forward to finishing this series. I think I have 2 books left, and then I can finally move on to the Camorra Chronicles, and I'm very, very excited about that. We actually have just 2 books left. They are both by Katherine Cowell. The first one I want to talk about is Beautifully Broken Life. This is book 2 in her Sutter Lake series. I tried reading book 1, which I think is Beautifully Broken Pieces, but the vibe of that one just didn't hook me. So I decided to try book 2 instead, which is this one, and I immediately enjoyed this one so much more. Let's see, we have Liam and Tessa. Liam is a famous, I would say like country / rock star basically, but he's from Sutter Lake. And then we have Tessa, who moved to Sutter Lake because she was running away from her abusive fiance. So she's been living there for the past 2 years. So it's a friends to lovers romance between Tessa and Liam. I really liked that they were both dealing with some pretty heavy things in their lives because Tessa, like I said, she ran away from this abusive ex who was definitely still looking for her. And then Liam is dealing with this stalker situation. And I just really enjoyed the vibe between these two characters. I love the setting of Sutter Lake. It just sounds so beautiful. And I also loved that this series centers a lot around horses. Like, that is just feeding my younger self, because I was obsessed with horses when I was like 8 to 10 years old, something like that, probably even younger. I think all of us went through that phase where we were just obsessed with horses. But yeah, I gave this like 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed it. Highly recommend this one. And then I'm currently reading book 3, which is Beautifully Broken Spirit, but I'm like 85% of the way through, something like that. I can already tell you that I'm probably gonna give this one 4 stars. Really enjoying this one as well. This one is about Tuck and Jensen. This one is a childhood friends to lovers romance that turns into like a friends with benefits situation. And of course, that is doomed from the start. Of course, they have real feelings for each other, and they're not gonna be able to handle just a friends with benefits situation. And this is also a single parent romance because Jensen, our heroine, is a single mom. This also has suspenseful elements to it as well. I just really like Katherine Cowell's writing style. I can see why Jess is so obsessed with her books. I can see why so many of us are enjoying her books. Like, there's just a vibe to her stories and to her characters that I just really enjoy, and I can't wait to continue on with the series. There's 2 more books in this series, and then I also really want to read her current series because I already have book 1. I have the audiobook and the ebook for that one. All right, hair is done, makeup is done, and I have talked about all 24 books that I have read so far this month. By the way, I got a haircut the other day. I hope that you guys like it. I'm really loving the vibe. And I would love it if you would leave a comment down below if you want to discuss any of the books that I brought up in this video, or as usual, if you want to give me recommendations. I always love getting recommendations from you guys, and I would love it if you would leave a like and subscribe, and I thank you so much in advance if you do, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!